Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to plunge right into some really interesting sources and pull out those surprising nuggets of knowledge just for you. Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, what looks like a simple gardening note on the surface, but trust me, it digs into a really fascinating biological puzzle. Our source is a post from July 25th, 2025. It's called Notes on Gardening, Part 605, The Artificial Purple Basil Cultivars, and it's by a gardener named Ang. So our mission today, explore Ang's specific struggle with purple basil and, understand the kind of surprising science hidden in these practical observations.
Yeah, what's really telling about Ang's experience, I think, is how it shows that even when you do everything right, perfect light, water, all the nutrients, sometimes there's just a fundamental biological thing going on, something that, well, the environment just can't fix. It really reminds you how genetics can sometimes set the final boundary.
Okay, so let's unpack Ang's observations then. Ang starts off noting something pretty familiar, I think, to anyone who gardens. Loads of common green basil, doing great, no problems at all. But then, the tricky part, this real struggle to keep good quality purple basil going, especially when trying to propagate it themselves. You can almost sense the frustration, right? Because this specific purple basil seemed to be, well, genetically unstable. What exactly was Ang seeing that pointed towards this genetic instability? And what does that term instability even mean here?
Well, Ang was seeing these purple plants consistently reverting, going back to green, losing that purple color they were supposed to have. So when we talk about genetic instability or reversion here, it means the genes responsible for that purple trait aren't, let's say, staying put. They're not stable. And if you think about the title, Ang used the artificial purple basil cultivars, well, a cultivar is just a plant variety bred by humans, right? Selected for certain traits. So the title itself hints that maybe this instability isn't just random chance. It suggests that in breeding for that strong purple color, maybe we've accidentally made the underlying genetics a bit less stable. The plant's older, perhaps more robust. Green genetic programming seems to be sort of pulling it back.
Right, and Ang really makes a point of saying it wasn't because they weren't caring for it properly. They list the conditions. 6 to 8 hours of full sunlight, regular watering, and fertilizing. I mean, that sounds pretty optimal. It really drives home that the issue wasn't poor gardening skills. Which makes you think, okay, if perfect conditions aren't the solution, what is driving this plant's behavior?
Exactly. And that's what's so fascinating here. Ang gave the plants everything they should need, technically speaking. But this fundamental genetic tendency, this predisposition, it just overrides the care. It really shows that sometimes the limits aren't external, they're internal, coded right into the DNA.
Yep.
It's not just, the plant being fussy. It's more like its basic biological blueprint is strongly geared towards one thing, maybe the original green state, and that conflicts with the purple trait we selected for. It's this interesting sort of tug of war between human selection and the plant's inherent nature.
So, faced with this kind of deep-seated genetic issue, Ang's final take is, well, it's quite direct. Maybe a bit disheartening if you love saving seeds or propagating. Ang basically says, unfortunately, there's little that can be done about genetic reversion other than sourcing new seeds from different vendors, ensuring they are a known stable variety. It sounds almost like throwing in the towel, doesn't it, on that particular batch anyway?
It does, but it's also very practical advice for a gardener, right? And if you look at the bigger picture, Ang's whole experience, it really highlights this key difference between environmental factors, sun, water, soil, and the plant's inherent genetics. It shows that for really successful gardening, especially with these specific, maybe artificial cultivars, you have to understand the genetics too, not just the growing conditions. It's not only about what you give the plant, but what the plant is, genetically speaking. And this isn't just basil. Plant breeders deal with genetic stability issues all the time when they're developing new types of plants.
So wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway for you listening?
Well, this deep dive into Ang's gardening notes really shows that even in something as seemingly straightforward as growing herbs on your windowsill, there are these complex biological forces at work. Sometimes the outcome isn't just down to your skill or effort as a gardener. Sometimes the plant's own DNA sets the limits. It's actually quite a humbling thought, seeing nature's quiet power like that.
Absolutely. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, this specific example, the purple basil reverting, kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where else in nature, or even in things we cultivate, might we find this sort of inherent instability, these unexpected reversions? And how might knowing about that possibility, that underlying reality, change how we approach things or what we expect from them? Something to think about.